We'd never really stayed at a place like this before. Right on the beach, a bit cut off from everything. And to be honest, we didn't know what to expect. But the moment we stepped out back and saw the water just a few steps away, it felt like things slowed down instantly. The mornings here were something else. No noise, no rush, just the sound of waves and the light slowly creeping in. And way out in the distance, you could see Mount Wellington watching over everything. I spent a lot of time than I expected just watching the birds along this beach. This one, the Silver Gull, was everywhere. I must have stood here for a good few minutes just watching it time the waves, stepping in, stepping out, like it knew exactly what it was doing. Even something as simple as this, just drying off, felt strangely calming to watch. Now, this is where I got a bit confused. I genuinely thought all of these bigger gulls were the same species, but it turns out they're not. This one here is the Pacific Gull, much larger, much heavier. You can really see the difference once you notice it. And then there's the Kelp Gull, which honestly I kept mixing up the whole time. It actually took me going back and looking at the footage later to realize I've been filming two completely different birds. Further along the beach, a flash of red breaks the monotony of the sand and stone. The pied oyster catcher. Meticulous, deliberate, every movement carefully considered, and sometimes persistence pays off. Not far away, its darker cousin, the sooty oyster catcher, equally at home in this rugged coastal world. One thing I definitely wasn't expecting here was this. Up on the eucalyptus trees, a couple of yellow-tailed black cockatoos. I've never actually seen them in the wild in Victoria. So this was one of those moments where you just stop and watch. They weren't doing much, but it didn't matter. It's just one of those sightings that stays with you. As the day fades, the sky begins its own performance. Lenticular clouds suspended like brushstrokes, shaped by unseen winds over the mountains. After a couple of quiet days at Opossum Bay, we swapped the stillness on the beach for something a bit different, a river cruise through Hobart, and honestly, it ended up being a really nice change of pace. We got on board the Spirit of Hobart, and within minutes of leaving the dock, you start to see the city from a completely different angle. It's one of those things you don't really think of much at first, but once you're on the water, everything just opens up. We started near Franklin Wharf, right in the middle of the waterfront, and as we moved along, you pass by the CSIRO buildings. Then the finish line of the Sydney to Hobart Yacht Race, which is pretty cool to see in person, especially knowing how big the race is. On one side, you've got Battery Point, and on the other, Sandy Bay stretching along the coastline. With the University of Tasmania sitting right there by the water. Further out, the river starts to feel wider. You pass the West Point Casino, then across towards Bellerive, where the stadium comes into view. And then you get to the Tasman Bridge. It's one of those landmarks you kind of take for granted, but there's actually a bit of history behind it. Back in 1975, a ship hit one of the bridge supports, and a whole section of it collapsed, which basically split Hobart in two. For a while, the only way across was by ferry, until they rebuilt the bridge. And standing under it now, it's hard to imagine something like that happening. Even out here, away from the beach, the wildlife doesn't really disappear. We spotted a few black swans just gliding across the water, a couple of crested terns flying overhead, and along the docks, pretty much every kind of gull we'd seen all week, still trying to figure out which one's which. By the time we were heading back, it didn't really feel like a tour anymore. It just felt like we'd spent a few hours seeing Hobart from a completely different side. From the quiet isolation of Opossum Bay to the living history of the Derwent, this part of Tasmania is a place of contrasts. Opossum Bay isn't the most convenient place to stay. It's a bit of a drive to get anything, shops, food, all of it. But honestly, that's kind of the point. It forces you to slow down, to just sit and take things in. Between the quiet beaches, the bird life, and just how peaceful it felt, this ended up being one of our favorite parts of the trip. And it's definitely somewhere we'd like to come back to.